April the 25th is the Feast of St. Mark. And St. Mark is the person that we understand to be the author of one of the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, that we have in the New Testament. But he's quite an elusive person. His name appears in a number of the other New Testament writings. There's a passage when Peter escapes from prison in the 12th chapter of the Acts of the Apostles. He goes to the house of Mary in Jerusalem, Mary who is the mother of Mark. Then, towards the end of that story, Mark joins Paul and Barnabas as they're about to head off on the first missionary journey, which takes them to Lystra and Iconium and Antioch and Pisidia. But then there's another mysterious reference after the meeting in Jerusalem of the apostles to talk about the entry of the Gentiles, where Paul and Barnabas fall out, and they fall out over the question of Mark, but we're not really sure what that means. In Mark, the name Mark is mentioned in Paul's little letter to Philemon, which we're pretty sure is written by him. Less sure is the Mark mentioned in 2 Timothy, since that seems to be a writing after the death of Paul. And Mark is described as the cousin of Barnabas in the letter to the Colossians. But it's just kind of fleeting references. There's nothing kind of built on it in the New Testament. That's often the case with New Testament names. And it's true in the history of the church that even the big-named people like Peter and Paul and Andrew and so forth, Thomas, they seem to sort of almost disappear from having a cluster of stories about them. Finally, in the first letter of Peter, Peter says, Peter says, your sister church in Babylon, which means Rome, sends you greetings, and so does my son Mark. What does that mean? And there's been a long-term interpretation that in the Garden of Gethsemane, in Mark's Gospel, there's this little account of a young man running away naked. People thought, is that who Mark is? But it may well be that it's a figure who symbolises something of what is lost at the arrest of Jesus. The relationship between Mark and Peter comes back in the 2nd century, when a presbyter called Papias says that Mark was the interpreter of Peter and assembled the stories about Jesus, but not in order, into the gospel that we now know as Mark. That not in order may reflect, in fact, the Gospel of Luke, which starts off by saying, I'm going to put these things in order, which weren't in previous Gospels. Almost an understanding that Mark did indeed precede Luke in the writing of the Gospels. Mark is very important for the Coptic church in Egypt. He has an association with Alexandria, and in Egypt there's a wonderful picture of him preaching in Alexandria by the Bellini brothers, two Bellini painters, Gentili and Giovanni, in the Brera in Milan. And then, of course, what we think most about him, I think, now is St. Mark's in Venice. And his bones were translated from Alexandria to Venice at a certain point, and around those relics then was built the great sort of basilica in Venice. Many of the things associated with them look towards the east, the painting of Bellini, the design, the Byzantine design of St. Mark's. So he's both in a sense an Easterner and a Westerner. We're very grateful to him for writing the Gospel, because it's very vivid. It's a very kind of clear narrative in many ways. Doesn't go in for too many long speeches by Jesus, and there's something about it that challenges us to see the mystery of the risen Christ and the horizon that opens up because of that.